This exploration brings us to the city of Tacoma in the state of Washington. And I am excited to bring you this video. I was pretty amazed at what I was able to find here. Here's Tacoma. You can see its proximity to Seattle, which I've done on this channel with the ridiculous fire narrative and the magical rebuild of 500 multi-storied brick buildings in less than a year. Absolutely ridiculous. I've also covered Victoria, Port Townsend, and even if we zoom out a little further, we've got Vancouver. We can get over down to Walla Walla. I've also covered. Spokane has been covered. And these are all amazing architectural old world cities. I've done Portland as well in a live investigation. You'll have to check out the live category if you want to see my Portland investigation. But I was looking at the overall area, the Puget Sound area, they call this here, with all of these islands in here, and relating this to the potential that we're living in a post-cataclysm realm, and that the geography was once quite different than what it is now. Looking like it's quite a mess, really, compared to what it may have been. And also noteworthy is the proximity of Tacoma to Mount Rainier, which we'll see in some of the photos, and I do have a couple of visuals for you. And a quick search into Mount Rainier reveals a couple interesting features on that site. We have several stone bridges. This one's also interesting because it's got what you might call a natural bridge, and then beneath that a stone bridge. And here's another one, and you can see how it's just sort of blending right into the rock itself, lending to the potential theory that we're in post-cataclysm, and what we're looking at is pockets of survival of infrastructure that may have been there. And just a couple looks at some of the higher areas. You can see the hikers here, but you've got a lot of red, what you would call rocks, looking very rubble-like. And again, with that red, reminiscent of brick and lines. Anyway, something to consider if you're not on board with the post-cataclysm theory. I think it's certainly worthy of investigation. Although this video will be mostly focusing on the architecture that once existed and in many cases still does exist in Tacoma. And I always like to give the population demographics. You can see here we've got a magical surge of people coming in with the, of course, the railroad. The terminus of the railroad being chosen for Tacoma. So you have a big leap here from 1870 to 1880, and you have also another big leap from 1880 to 1890 from 1,000 to 36,000, and then nothing happens for 10 years really, population-wise, and then you get another big bump from 1900 to 1910. You're going to see a lot of buildings from this era. And just keeping those population figures in mind, I want to show you a couple bird's eye before we get to the visuals. So this is supposed to be from 1885, right in the middle of that massive boom when it goes from 1,000 to 36,000. And this is what Tacoma is supposed to have looked like at the time. And we just fast forward the clock, only 8 years, we get another bird's eye view, and it looks like this. 8 years later. And we're to assume that all of this development happened in that very short window of time. 1893, you can see everything built out here. And you can also get a sense of the scale of the architecture. We will be looking at some of these throughout the presentation. I know you can't read the designation on these structures, but I'll just quickly scroll around and show you the type of architecture they were said to have had when there was just over 30,000 people living there, supposedly. You got the courthouse, got the old high school, and several other of these buildings which you will see. There's one in here you won't see. There's the City Hall. This one here I could not find. I think it's the Rochester something Hotel. You can see with the two onion domes. I've seen those onion domes in Portland. I've seen them in San Francisco. I've seen them in Washington, D.C. Usually designated some sort of temple. Jewish temple of some sort, but this is also a depiction supposedly from 1870 when there was almost nothing there, we're told. So they're really painting the narrative with these bird's eye views, trying to fit that into the population growth. So before we go any further, let's let's talk about the early industry in Tacoma as well. So early industry in Tacoma is said to be shipbuilding, shipping, and lumber production. These are the three main sources for growth, coupled with the train terminus being built there. Really not indicating, when you see the architecture, not really showing us any signs of lumber. That's for sure. You're going to see brick and stone structures. But sort of a magical growth going on here, and you're going to see the usual suspects show up here as well when it comes to the repopulation of these cities. And history always wants to paint these things out as humble beginnings. This is how they kind of show us how everything began there. And here's another one. This is the first house built in Tacoma. You always get this narrative, 1865, when there were very few people there. And they also want us to believe that this is the way the people of the region lived for 10,000 years. I think there's something seriously wrong with this narrative, and I don't think it flatters these people. I don't think it flatters anyone, really. I think it's all a misdirection. So let's get into the buildings. Another part of Tacoma's early history is the Puget Sound War, the Indian Wars, 1855-56, expanding out into that entire region, really. And again, I think part of this is all misdirection and narrative to paint a picture of something that didn't happen the way we are told. It's very possible that they were cleaning up the remnants of what was there. And then the repopulation comes in, then you see those big booms. If you haven't investigated the Cabbage Patch Kids, or Cabbage Babies, and the orphan trains, it's something you need to look a little bit deeper into. The asylums, all of this is a part of our true history, I would suggest, that has been covered up. And maybe even by us consciously or subconsciously because of the trauma aspect of it. But I think the way that our society has been shaped is much different than we have been told. So here we have a photo from 1884. We're told looking like something's gone on here, some sort of damage has gone on here. You're going to see a lot of early photographs from the 1880s, 1890s as well. And this one is also said to be 1885. And take a look at the sloping going on here. You can see a lot of these buildings look cut. 1885 again, right when that first bird's eye view was shown, and these look old. Everything here looks old. Does not look like this is all being thrown up by a population that is just arriving. You know, thousands of people arriving on the trains and deciding to build half-buried buildings, making very little sense at all. You're going to see a lot of that. And it is quite a large file. Actually, the more I look, the more I seem to find when it comes to Tacoma. This is still in that 1885 era. You can see the decorations. Why the need to do all of this when you're really just arriving? You probably want to build a log cabin of some sort, a place where you can reside. Yet you have what looks like infrastructure that's been around for much longer, making very little sense. Also take note of the mode of transportation you're going to see in these early photographs. And still from 1885, and this is interesting, and I bring this up a lot in my videos, very wide streets to accommodate the streetcars running down the middle of the road. Again, all of this would have to have been a part of the infrastructure, yet history tells us that these inventions were coming on strong and spreading like rapid fire all over the place. Didn't seem to matter where you lived. Everybody gets a streetcar system. But that means the architecture and infrastructure has to accommodate that. And again, the theory is that this is all part of the old infrastructure. You get early depictions again of these there, and you can see the streetcars here. In this depiction, the streetcars operating on what look like, well, first of all, these guys look like they're on a collision course. But operating on what looks like there's no lines or wires here. It's an interesting drawing. And another look at that street view, and you can see the types of buildings. 1889, this photograph taken from. So just 4 years later, you've got domes and turrets on the corners. You've also got, like, why on earth do you have multi-storied structures made of brick and stone in a town that has just increased from 1,000 to almost 40,000 people over a decade? This implies quite the organization would have had to have gone on. They're telling us this is the laying of a cornerstone of a structure. You can see 1889 again. You see a building that looks like it's been there for quite some time. You can see in the foreground, these are the buildings you expect to see. These little gable-roofed, four-sided shacks, if you will. And again, you're going to see the slopage. You can see half the building tucked in underneath the slope of the street, so indicating some sort of regrading that went on, some sort of cataclysm, potentially the mud flood aspect of the cataclysm. I think when we talk about mud flood, I think it is a byproduct of the cataclysm. I've heard it referred to as brick dust, where these buildings in many cases exploded, imploded, melted, and waves of mud. I think this is a cataclysm that happened here that we really can't wrap our heads around. And why on earth you have a building like this in the 1890s? I find it quite comical. Pardon me if I laugh. And of course the early inheritors, the people that were running these shops out of these multi-storied structures, looking in some ways like they don't really know. I don't know, there's some sort of, I don't want to be rude or insulting, but lost innocence. Maybe it's not innocence. In some cases, I think a lot of these potentially were orphaned, or even more so. We might be even be getting into the cloned territory. I think it's all on the table. I don't think we can say for sure that it's not at this point. I'm trying to understand our past here. And you can just see the scale of architecture at the time. Got broken windows. And it looks like we have wooden planked sidewalks in this case. Probably covering up what's beneath. And if we look closely, we can also see, and you'll see quite a few examples, these streets are bricked up as well. So despite its size and very early, or very late in the game as far as the historical narrative goes, we've got a well built out city. Got all sorts of parades going on in those early times as well. A lot of ritual, all of this steeped in ritual and repetition. I think all a part of the mind control program that we've been put under, which we're coming out of now. Take a look at the massive blockwork and very old looking brickwork here in the background. This is a photo from 1907, we're told. And we have a street scene from 1908. This is that decade where they're experiencing another boom, a double in population from 37,000 to 83 by 1910. Not looking madly chaotic, looking actually well established at this point. You can see the courthouse in the background. We'll take a closer look at that. And then here we can see just make out the brickwork in the road. All of this after the fact, I think. All of these painted on signs, flags, almost like a capturing of a location. Capturing and resetting of a location that existed pre-cataclysm and is now being kicked off again. Has been captured and repopulated. Here we have the old shipyard building, and this is the city hall in the foreground. And again, you get a sense of the grade of the streets. Another good look at that with the streetcar running down the middle of the road. This is the Annie Wright Seminary, photograph from 1884, sitting out all by itself almost. And there's another look at the Annie Wright Seminary. a nice looking structure, to be sure. Not even sure what it's made of. Sometimes they look like they're made of wood, but when you get down to it, you find that they're a lot more sturdily built. Tacoma has an armory. We're told this one was completed in 1908, took 2 to 3 years to build. And there it is, sitting next to the courthouse. And we have hypothesized here on this channel that the purpose of these buildings may have had something to do with housing dirigible air travel, which would explain the shape of a lot of these armories, with the curved roof and the big open air area inside. And really, like, how old could this brickwork really be? 500 years old, possibly? And why on earth would you go to the trouble of building in such a manner? These are all questions you have to ask. Of course, if you're familiar with the narrative, you've already asked these questions. You're already laughing along with me. But many people come to these videos and are taken by surprise at the questioning of the narrative that goes on here. And here on the left you have the Bankers Trust building, looking like it's at least 6 stories tall. And we've got a big painted sign on the side, just in case you weren't sure. Photograph from 1909. And the buildings in the foreground potentially rebuilt the upper portions, and I would suspect that the lower portions part of infrastructure of the old world city that once existed. I think there was probably a lot of damage, and they did have to do a lot of rebuilding and repairing, repurposing, sprucing up. I suspect that's what a lot of these population booms, that's what's actually going on, is they're bringing in the new population, and they're getting these cities ready to go. And I think this would have taken several decades. This is the Bostwick, built in 1889, early time period, looking kind of like that, having a Flatiron look to it. And it still stands. We've come to the Broadway Theater, also known as the Tacoma Theater. I have a little bit of narrative here. Opened in 1890, again early. Again, you're going to see this decade just get peppered with build dates. Burns down in 1963. Again, not sure how a brick building burns down, but you can get a sense here of the slope as well, and potential regrading that went on after that cataclysm that it may have occurred. And here we're looking from the other angle. Once again, you can see the stonework in the lower reaches here. And just a quick look at the interior. This is a magnificent theater. Here they have it designated the Tacoma Theater, giving you what you might call that Richardsonian Romanesque styling. You got a lot of detailing, terracotta detailing, but very well built brickwork and very heavy stonework. I always find it interesting when you have these steps to enter the building and a slope, kind of a dangerous situation there. Not originally built that way, I'd suggest. This is around the back side and gives you a look at the dormers along the back there. Here you can see the dome, or the cone, I guess. Demolished in the 60s. 1891, the Bryant School, giving us a nice look at the plethora of children. And maybe you'll say, well, all their parents were working, just like they are in the modern day. I would suspect there's probably more going on here. These are all being indoctrinated into the new way of thinking. And when they grow up, they have no other reference point but the one that they were taught in these institutions. And I think there's much more to that story. I'll just keep going here just to give you another sense of the streets of Tacoma, Washington. At this point, I'd like to thank those of you that have made a generous contribution to Old World Exploration channel. I certainly appreciate your giving to the channel. It helps me, gives me time and resources to continue bringing these explorations to you. So many thanks. And I appreciate all of you who watch on a regular basis, and I welcome anyone who is just arriving to the channel. There's plenty of content to sift through. And I would also like to extend an invitation to anyone who would like to have a conversation that we could share with with people, whether it be live or a recorded conversation. I certainly welcome that as well. Central School, another school, 1903. Large structures meant for re-educating the population. The early Chamber of Commerce, looking like it's been captured, let's say. We look a little closer, you can see the lower windows and doors. And there's another good look at that, the lower doors and windows. A lot of that evidence here in Tacoma. And just a couple churches. First Congregational Church on the right, and the First Christ Scientist Church with the big dome on the left, the streetcar running up the middle. One of my favorites from this area, the City Hall, designed after 1981, so they didn't even begin to design it, and then they completed it in 1893, giving it about a 15 to 18 month construction build time. You tell me if that's even possible. If you've done any work in the building trades, you'll be laughing with me on this one. If you're a narrative apologist, you'll be rapidly defending the narrative that they tell us here. But there's so many of these stories that really make no sense. The walls are 8 feet thick at the base and taper to 6 feet at street level. Still stands. Beautiful structure. 5 stories on the main and another 5-story tower on the corner. If we can get a little closer, you can see what's going on here too. You've got plants kind of growing out of it. They can't even maintain it really in the modern day. Just the decoration alone is breathtaking. This is a fantastic early photograph of the City Hall, again showing us the slope going on. Not even just the construction of the building, but the landscaping around the building to make everything work properly would have taken a monumental amount of physical labor and work, and the timelines just don't make sense. Poor horse and buggies hanging around, ready to haul all that brick. There you have a tree growing out of one of the circular, not even windows, like portals almost. And of course the Roman numeral clock with the 4 eyes for the number 4. I was always taught it was IV. You have this massive structure, this commercial club or warehouse building, completed in 1 year in 1910. Couldn't find much on that one. Massive. Alright, here's a courthouse I opened the video with, and I have featured this in another video, so I won't spend too much time on it, but it certainly is worth a bit of a pause. Quite a comical narrative if you read a little more into this one. So it's said to have taken 32 months to build, completed in 1893. Remember, there's no growth going on population-wise in that decade. And then the narrative will tell us that this place was falling apart basically the day it was completed, trying to set us up for the eventual demolition that would take place further down the road. And they provide us with a construction photo. This looks more like destruction, just a big pile of rubble and stone. This stone, I'm not sure what happened here. They were working it and then they stopped working it to give it those right angles. And these would be, I guess, the stonemasons. They probably are masons, but probably maybe not stonemasons. I think these construction photos are forgeries. I don't believe them for a second. But we move on, and in 1949, an earthquake forced the tower to be removed. Same old story. We get that all the time. This photograph is right before they're about to tear this thing down. You can see they must be salvaging certain aspects of the construction before they take it to the wrecking ball in 1959, and there you have the new courthouse in the background. So old world, new world. And I would suspect the demolition, being a part of the demolition of such a structure would be a soul-deadening experience. I can't think of it in any other way. Turning the clock back now to 1880s again. I have again these structures, so many of them. It's incredible. I hardly even touched on much of the industrial area too. This is one of the industrial buildings. I wanted to include this one because it features this structure with that very circular aspect to it and a dome in the middle, and I don't know what that is. And I looked far and wide for that. So if anyone can tell me what we're looking at here, get that in the comment section. I would certainly appreciate it. These videos are intended to be an archive of architecture by location. So if we can add to that in the comment section, please do. This is the Elks Lodge. Apparently it only took them, well, construction began in 1915, and by February of 1916 it was open. So I mean, that gives it maybe 13 months if you're going end to end on that, but absolutely ridiculous. There it is in the modern day. You can see the types of building materials on here, and also the landscaping, the stairs next to it, building tucked in behind this hill here. Absolutely laughable. Here we have the elk sticking its head out. So there's one of the fraternal orders. And the interior, not looking like it once did. Here's actually a look at what it once looked like in pristine condition. Move on. Many of these blocks will be shown in here as well. There's a nice look at the brick streets as well. Why on earth would they have brick paved streets? How did they have the manpower? Where did they get all the resources from? These questions are all, at this point, have been asked so many times here on this channel. This is the Fidelity Trust building. It was in that bird's eye we saw from 1893. Here's a look at the building, and you can see the grading again on that. And just look at some of the interior of that bank. This looks like marble. And another look. And you can see there's a basement level as well. This is the Fife Hotel. I have it tagged here as 1887, probably when it was built. Not sure if that's when the photograph was taken. I suspect this is a later photograph. You can see the little, and we got a peek at this earlier on actually. Here's a better look at the hotel itself, and again giving us the same indications. Barricaded off lower section of the building, and steeply graded street. The Fife Hotel, not much information on that exists. Fire station was built much the same as you might build an armory. And of course they had to put little turrets on the corners. And this is the technology they had at the time to fight fires. A little steam boiler, and 2 horses pulling their wheeled carriage around. But this is the building they housed it in. Something's not right about that, of course. Church of Christ Scientist, we saw this earlier. Just a quick look at that. Not a lot of churches in Tacoma that I could find. First Methodist. These gentlemen are the gas company at the time. Early photograph of the gas company. So again, this is their mode of transportation, and you've seen all the architecture and infrastructure that existed. Not consistent with what we're seeing here. The Young Love Grocery, 4-story building, fire escape, ornately decorated, 1890, everything built in that same time period. Remember, the industries at the time were shipping and lumber, so you have lots of loggers, lots of people working in the shipyards. How many people were in the construction trades at the time? All these questions need to be asked. Tacoma Grocery Company here, massive structure. You can see a rock retaining wall back here as well. Interesting. With some sort of buttress or pilaster to reinforce that. And again, the mode of transportation. This is how you got your groceries delivered to the store. And everybody out front posing for the camera. This one was incredible. When I found this, I think I'm going to add this to my 3rd book. The Gross Brothers building. I think it did have a couple other names as well. Maybe the Jones block. I could be wrong on that. You can see the short time frame, 1889 to 1916. Take a look at this beauty. This one is supposed to have been erased, I think. This one was a lucky catch in the last minutes of my search. Really, really not fitting what you would expect from Tacoma, Washington. Another school, the Hawthorne School, 1886, early time period. Look at the foreground, looking very rubble and muddied, cleaned out, maybe newly sided, possibly. Maybe as a cover-up, possibly. Just speculating. Another school, the Lincoln High School, 1 year build time in the 19 teens, looking like a castle. There it is again. 1 year to construct. But these are not the most magnificent schools. The most magnificent school potentially in the country is the Stadium High School. Apparently constructed as a railway hotel in 1891, and then the 1893 panic basically cancelled the production of that hotel or the build, which is ridiculous because I've seen so many builds go on during this time period in other locations, even though the panic and subsequent depression was going on. They take 2 years to convert it into a high school in the early 1900s, we're told. And let's just get an eyeful of that one. The Stadium High School. Looking like something, a chateau in France or something like that, even beyond the scale of many of those. And here's the stadium down below. I think it was featured in a movie, 10 Things I Hate About You, a movie from the 90s starring Heath Ledger, I believe. That was the high school that they were in that one. Take a look at that. Anyone go to this high school watching this video? Please put your stories in the comments. Would love to hear more about it. I have heard stories of fused and melted brick in some of the areas of the structure. And again, that ritual militaristic aspect going on here. And there's the construction of the stadium. And there's the mode of transportation used to construct. It's a lot of dirt to move, don't you think? We'll move on. This is high school in the background. Not sure what this building was. I have it designated as a history museum. Again, anyone local, let me know. The Holy Rosary Cathedral. Took 17 months to construct, completed in 1921. Nice looking structure. We don't build them like that anymore. And I mentioned the Great Seattle Fire. Spokane also had its own Great Fire. Vancouver also had its Great Fire. Calgary had its Great Fire. And those are all hard reset dates, I think, for these locations. A way to say we built ourselves up from the ground after the Great Fire. I think there's a fictional aspect to these stories that allow them to cram all of this into this short period of time. There's a nice look at the brick paved streets as well. Very wide looking streets to accommodate the streetcars. Looking much older than a city that only had 73 people in 1870. So very, very young early narrative here. Yet another school that was demolished in a short period of time. 1, 2, 3, 4 stories with a little tower on it. Very well built. Making no sense why you would tear that thing down. The First Baptist Church, originally built as a First Baptist, now it's the Urban Grace, showing us all sorts of signs of regrading going on here. So in the foreground here we have the Carnegie Library, Andrew Carnegie, on a warpath to get everybody the right books to read at the time, and what I suggest is a repurposing of structures designated as libraries. I think a lot of this had to do with making sure there was nothing that contradicted the new narrative that was being implemented, working in conjunction, of course, with the school system, education system, the Rockefellers, all the rest of it. It's actually, the picture is being painted quite clearly if you choose to look at it. Yet another school, the Lowel Elementary School, built in 1892, right before the panic and crash, or depression. The Luzon building, right before again, you have the regrading going on here. You can see they have the railing and the building continuing on the flat in behind here. No doubt if you were on the street above, you would be entering from onto this floor and not down here on this floor. And in the foreground, we just get a little taste of a corner turret, because that's just the way they like to roll, apparently, in late 1800s in Tacoma. No, I'm telling you, I would suggest that it is my belief that these are much older, and this has all been repurposed, and the historical narrative that we've been given is needs to be trashed. Really can't be relied on. Do you think these gentlemen had anything to do with these faces being put on the sides here? Mason and Finley. Well, would you look at that? Coffee dealers, I'll bet they are. Quite well dressed, wouldn't you say? We also have a Mason block, Alan C. Mason, and, oh well, the strange gentlemen seem to reside here as well. Not the only one, though. We've got this one, which is apparently a temple from 1905. You can see the size of the two columns, the bases here on the entryway. And we also have a modern temple / theater. You can see here the signage. So the gentlemen's club's ever present, no matter where we look, and quite prominently so. Especially in those early time periods. They seem to have faded off into the background in many cases in our modern day, but I think they were very prominent in early society, 1900 society. Again, all the hallmarks of buildings that were built on the level, and then the grading changed. I wanted to include this one. They had a natatorium as well. We've seen amazing natatoriums in Boise and Helena. This one not quite to that level. Nice looking structure. Could easily be New World construction, but well built. Maybe built on, again, previous structure. But I wanted to include the natatorium. 1888, the National Bank here on the corner. Again, you can see the lower openings, and then a couple steps to get into the front door. The National Realty building, 2-year build time, completed in 1911. 1911, there's about 80,000 people living there. It's just about the same size as the city I live in, and there's no way they would ever build such a structure here in the modern day where I live. Certainly in that 2-year period time, but not even close. They would never add this kind of decoration. The logistics of trying to get that work completed is mind-boggling. The amount of scaffolding that would have been needed. The fact that you're adding this roof and decoration on the top is absolutely frivolous. Let's take a closer look at the front entry area, just to give you a sense of the scale. There's a great look at the brickwork in the streets, and I don't know if these people have any idea what's going on here with these strange looking figures. But this is just the lower portion, just this part here of this massive structure. And again, you get the decoration at the top as well. It's a beautiful, beautiful building. The National Realty building. They also had a conservatory, kind of reminiscent of Crystal Palaces that we see. They're telling us it's built in 1907, I suspect much older. Beautiful. And here we have an Oddfellows parade in the 1880s. That's quite a lot of gentlemen. At a time, again, when the city is going from 1,000 to 36,000 in 1890. These guys look pretty well established. They don't really look new to the area. They look very well dressed. And these buildings look like they've been here a while. And that's why I was so excited to bring you Tacoma, because this, I don't know if you're finding this quite conclusive evidence-wise, but as far as my research goes, and I've done, like I say quite often, over 200 locations in North America, Tacoma ringing the alarm bells as far as I'm concerned. And then, of course, those gentlemen need a place to go, so we have yet another Oddfellows location. And just a little bit of their symbolism: friendship, love, and truth. Potentially, could it be the exact opposite? I suspect something's going on there. We know that they're connected with the orphan trains, with the repopulation narrative that went on in the 1800s. P.T. Barnum and Charles Loring Brace, two culprits. Thanks to Guy Anderson for tipping me off on those two characters, responsible for a lot of the movement of parentless children in the 1800s. The Pantasius Theater, 2-year build time on this, we're told. Again, you're getting that grading going on. Let's take a look at some of the interior on this thing. Many of these theaters end up being converted into movie houses or theaters. I think we're all part of a performing arts culture that was alive and well in the old world. And eventually, a lot of them end up getting torn down, actually. But look at the detail work here in this theater in Tacoma. In the 19-teens, they're doing this kind of work. It's absolutely incredible. And there's another look at it. A look up to what looks like a skylight of some sort. Very detailed work going on here. Still stands, of course. You've seen the modern photographs. Much more to the story. If you've got local theaters, old theaters that are on their way out, definitely go check them out before they get rid of these things. Here's a close-up look at some of the detail work. Take a look at all the detail on here. This is just like a cornucopia of vegetables, fruit, whatever it might be. Off the charts detail. For a performing arts theater in Tacoma in 1918, I don't know if I'm buying that. Here we have a pathway to the pavilion. I suspect much more going on down in this area. And more of these old structures from the 1880s. With, of course, the suits out front. Not really looking rough around the edges. These people, I mean, they have the beards, but they're all suited up, and I think are being resetting the area, making sure the narrative sticks. Perkins Building, 2-year build time. Very, very busy bees here in Tacoma. Post Office, 2-year build time. Federal Post Office. Early Power Company Transformer House. Why not build it out of brick, give it a little detail. It's just a transformer house, but that's just how they roll. The steam laundry with the horse and buggy out front, and 3 stories of very high arched windows. Beautiful looking structure. These ones here on the left make a lot more sense. This is what you wouldn't get a chuckle out of me seeing these. This is the one that gives me the chuckle. Making very little sense, and they've got the boot to indicate it's a laundry on the side. So here's the North Pacific Railroad headquarters we saw sitting next to the City Hall in a couple photographs previous. I messed up the date here. I think this is an early 1880s construction time period, like very early. They give this 13 months of build time. Again, you can see the grading going on here, and then what they're trying to tell us is a construction photo with big massive stones in the foreground, I suppose. And it's the 1880s, and they've got the streetcar. I don't know. There it is again, looking like it's firmly rooted to whatever's beneath. Interesting looking structure. The Rhodes Department Store, built in 1903, you have the brick paved streets and overdressed individuals. Photograph probably coming from a bit of a later time period. But it's a decent sized structure, that's for sure. A lot of large structures for such a small city. Again, the brick paved streets giving us a real indication of infrastructure that's well intact. The Realty Theater, again being built apparently in the same year as the Pantasius Theater. That must quite a boom for theaters, I guess. Right around the end of WW1. The Rust Mansion, 1905. We're told this is built. Now, I give you all these dates, but I just want to confirm that I don't believe that these built dates whatsoever. Maybe they were the dates that they went in and patched up the roof and did some work in some of these, or inhabited them, or founded them, or whatever it might be, but I think these are much older. I wanted to include this. This is a photograph from 1943, a scrap metal drive that went on during the war. This went on everywhere where they were collecting a lot of scrap metal. This is one of the reasons a lot of the bells, or one of the reasons we're told a lot of the bells from a lot of the cathedrals were removed and melted down for the war effort. I suspect beneath the surface of that a much more nefarious situation going on to erase much of the old world. This would also erase much of the infrastructure from the old world. You can see here a lot of tire, a lot of wheels, probably streetcars were thrown into these scrap metal drives, I would think. I did have a question recently, where do you think all the streetcars went to? Well, there's one of your answers. The Sprague building, completed in 1890, only 7 months to build this in 1890 apparently, when they had 36,000 people living there, and they're building so much more. This one's made of stone and brick. Looks like it's been facaded to take away that textured stone look. In the modern day it still stands. Oh, maybe not. Maybe that was just a different angle. 7 months to build that. Okay. Built in 1 year. St. Luke's Church. Churches were easy back then, apparently. Come to the Tacoma Hotel. I think this is a McKim, Mead and White construction. Very famous architectural firm. Part of the historical or founder's narrative, I would suggest. A lot of the famous architects pop up all over the country. This would be one of them. Completed in about 1 year, this hotel, in 1884. When you're having a massive influx of people moving to Tacoma, they're building this hotel apparently. And here's a look at it from the back side. You can see the dome in the middle there. Nice looking structure. Built in a year. If you believe that, I mean, I don't know what to say to you. Probably not the channel for you. Here's a look at the interior. What did it take them 5 minutes to cap these columns? Then a look at the interior court of that hotel. A lot of detail work here too. You can just barely make it out. Moving on, we've seen several of these structures. Not sure. This might be the theater. This might be the old gross building we looked at earlier. Nothing gross about it. And just some more interesting photographs of the people of the time, steeped in ritual, under the spell, I would suggest. This one's interesting too, the Seeing Tacoma tour. The streetcars, were that many people coming to see Tacoma? Or were these people new here? Were they moving here? And yeah, is this for new arrivals, not necessarily for tourists? I suspect that's the case. We're coming to the end of the file here. The streetcars, such a large part of the narrative. And then there's the elephants, of course. But you can see the stones on the streets again here, and you can get a sense of the buildings here in the background. Keeping in mind, of course, that not a large city whatsoever, and a very, very young city. But that's completely contradictory with what we're seeing here with a lot of the architecture. You have the rose floats or rose parades, these decorated buggies. Seen this in other locations as well, flower parades. And I try to accommodate people when they ask me to look at a location. If you really want me to get a location done, consider making a donation, and I will say with absolute certainty that I will cover that location if you feel so inclined. Otherwise, I don't know if I'm going to get to it. I've got a long list, but I can put yours at the top of the list if you really want me to cover a specific location. Here's the U.S. mail buggy. I'm sorry. Absolutely absurd. And we get the children looking of Asian origin here. Curious. Looking like it's a float for a parade as well. Putting the children on display. Yet again. This one giving us a good sense of the age of the streets here. The wear of the brickwork, the indentation, the rounding over of the edges. And I saved this one because we're looking at yet another gentleman's organization, the Woodmen of the World. Don't know much about them. There's an insurance aspect to this organization, but yet another gentleman's organization involved in the early days of Tacoma, Washington. Oh, we have the Carlton Hotel, also built in that early time period. 2 years. 2 years is max for these things. Anything more than 2 years would be a failure in construction, it seems. And again, we have 2 years. Union Station here, built in 2 years. Very interesting looking dome on this one of my favorites. Again, it still stands, dome looking pristine. No doubt much of it has been reworked. And there you can see an old photograph, and look at some of the interior on this one. In the 1910-ish. This is supposedly how we're supposed to believe this is how they were building in Tacoma. I don't know. This is just a gas station, but you can see the building here in the background. That's Old World, and then foreground is New World. The Washington School, yet another school, training the minds of the youth of the time. Did they have any parents? I have to wonder. And this is the entrance to Wright Park. W-R-I-G-H-T, 1891. You get the statue work going on here. Very cultured people apparently flocking to Tacoma. Nice looking mansion style structure in the background. And the final, as usual in many of my videos, is a YMCA, also being built in the same time period. So that's a look at Tacoma, Washington. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope it surprised you as much as it did me, and I thank you for spending your time here with me on the channel. This has been an old world exploration. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe, hit the thumbs up button, and comment. I believe we are in the process of remembering who we really are and casting off the shackles of illusion. Until next time.